It's been reported, Minister, that the recent changes to business rates within the 2018 budget, that no consultation was made with local authorities. Is that true? And if so, do you think that that was, would that not have been a sensible measure to take?
There was no direct formal consultation exercise aimed specifically at local authorities. That is correct. However, the Sir John Timpson review will have covered local authorities to some degree. So he held a number of evidence sessions around the country. There was also some survey work that was carried out at the same time. But I think the other thing I would add to that is the fact that clearly when you're dealing with matters that pertain to the budget and you go through that process, it tends to lend itself to the Treasury quite rightly keeping a lot of that to itself rather than going out and talking to the world about what its plans are or might be. The other thing I would add is that clearly HCLG as a department is very closely involved with the sector generally, and all of that kind of feedback is involving local authorities through HCLG on this matter and many others, of course, feed into the Treasury in the normal way.
Okay. Look, the Treasury also estimates that the 2018 budget measures that they will reduce business rate bills for 500,000 small retailers, but that has been described by experts as, and I quote, nonsense, wildly misleading, because almost half of those small businesses already qualified for the small business rate relief. Do you still stand by the Treasury's analysis?
Okay, what I would say of that is that the 500,000 figure would be approximately the number of retailers who are at or below £51,000 in terms of rateable value. You are absolutely right that within that group there will be a number that of course are below £12,000 rateable value, but in which case they're going to qualify for 100% small business rate relief. There will be others who, and we've already discussed the issue of state aid, who may not qualify on the basis of potentially otherwise breaching the state aid limit. And there will be others where a local authority decides to administer this particular additional relief by way of invitation rather than automatically applying it, where some of those businesses may not apply and therefore may not benefit from it. So if your question is the figure of 500,000, i.e. all those that are a rateable value of 51,000 or below, are they all going to benefit directly? Then the answer to that would be no.
Okay. Well, Minister, would you at least concede to the point that the discount offered within the 2018 budget for small retailers, that just adds an extra layer of complexity to an already complex system?
Well, I would say it adds an extra layer of relief to a group of, well, it does. I mean, if I'm a small business and the government says, well, next year and the year after we're going to cut your rates by a third, I would feel pretty good about that. The issue of complexity is an interesting one because it's quite rightly typically levied at every kind of tax that there is, and people often cite the length of our tax code overall, for example. But there are always good reasons, in a sense, for some level of complexity, because what it's driving really is something that is more targeted in many cases. So for here we're trying to carve out smaller retailers because we recognise there's perhaps a particular social value to having small retailers in high streets. And unfortunately, this ability to target and carve out and be sensitive to the way that markets work inevitably leads to more legislation and a bit more complexity. But I think the overarching view that I would have would be, if you look at business rates, it is simply the multiplier times your rateable value, less whatever reliefs there are, and that is what you pay. And that, as a concept, is relatively straightforward.
Okay, well, with regards to the discount, there was a time limit introduced. Why was that introduced? And also, what will actually happen to the discount at the end of the 2-year period?
Okay, so the discount is for 1920 and 2021. It is for 2 years. We have not said what we will do after that time. We will clearly wish to appraise how high streets are doing and businesses are doing as we approach that the end of that period, and then we will take a decision as to what we then do going forward.
Why was it introduced only for 2 years? What was the thinking behind that?
Just to allow a period in which we would have both some relief for the high street, but also have a fund that would allow those high streets to look at how they might transition, and 2 years seemed to be a reasonable period over which to do that, whilst giving us the flexibility of not necessarily being locked into the same thing for a long period of time. And your question might be to me, if we've made it 5 years, well, why make it 5 years? It might not be appropriate after 5 years. Shouldn't you have had a shorter period and reviewed it? And that was on balance, that was the approach that we decided to take.
And after 2 years, that's still a question mark as to what will actually happen, whether that stays or not?
Yes, in the sense that we have said it will be in place for those 2 years, but of course that doesn't rule out at any point or any future fiscal event deciding that we will take a decision as to what will happen after that period.
Okay, thank you, Chair.